and I think we should use the time properly. So welcome to our today's webinar, Designing for Nature, Biodiverse Green Roofs and Animal-Aided Design. We are very glad that so many of you could join today. We had a lot of registrations. We know that the majority of people are from Europe, but not everybody, and we have people from all over the world, and majority of you are already working in the field. So thank you very much for your time. The information for you, technical information, this webinar will be recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel. We will send a link to you later. And if you don't want to be visible, we suggest you to turn off your camera. We also kindly ask you to stay muted during the webinar, so it's not interrupting our speakers. Yes, I should see if... Yes, we have everybody here. Thank you very much for joining. So we start. Today we have a webinar. But first we will introduce EFB, European Federation of Green Roofs and Living Wall Associations. Maybe you know me already. My name is Tatiana Konchenko. I'm a General Secretary of EFB, and EFB is a European federation connecting all European national associations on green roofs and walls. Currently we have 18 members from 20 European countries, and we are also members of bigger world networks and partner networks around the world and Europe. This webinar, to support the topics of green roofs and walls, we try to convince municipalities, different stakeholders. We started the webinar series and some companies supporting us. And today this webinar is supported by the company Fürs Grün. It's system provider in the green sector with a wide range of products for green roofs and garden. In addition to geotextiles and garden lighting, they offer solutions for pond construction and erosion control. They supply their products mainly in Europe, but also worldwide. We are very grateful for this support, and thanks to the support of companies, this webinar is free for participants. Thank you very much. Yes, I will introduce today's moderator, Vera Ensit-Zechner, EFB Vice President and Independent Consultant on Nature-Based Solutions on Buildings, a representative from National Association from Austria. Welcome, Vera, and she will continue to moderate today's webinar and will tell you about today's agenda. Have a nice webinar.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. Hello, everybody. Welcome in this great afternoon session today. Yes, just like Tatiana said, I have the pleasure to moderate today and yes, introduce two great speakers to you in the afternoon, because Thomas is giving his presentation alone because Wolfgang had to go on an excursion with future experts. So probably just quickly thinking, why are we having this webinar on biodiversity on roofs? This is actually already the third time we are having this topic during the time that we started having webinars at the EFB. But yes, I would say one of the main reasons we are repeating this topic 2025 again is that biodiversity and roofs in walls is a growing topic for whole of our industry and value chain across Europe. And yes, we currently, of course, follow and facilitate the EC nature restoration law being implemented also in urban areas. Just probably to give you some quick background about it. So the Article 8 of the Nature Restoration Regulation, it sets out the objectives for urban green spaces, and it's divided into two distinct phases that are happening right now. So first, by the 31st of December 2030, member states across the EU are required to ensure that there is no net loss of urban green spaces anymore and of urban tree canopy compared to the level of urban green spaces from 2024. And as a second step, starting from 2031, the Nature Restoration Regulation mandates member states to achieve an increasing trend in the total national area of urban green space, as well as urban tree canopy, until a satisfactory level is reached. Now, of course, every state can basically have their own regulation on what a satisfactory level actually is. But finally, also the legal text clarifies that the increasing trend of urban green spaces can be met, including through the integration of urban green space into buildings and infrastructure. We cite the 48, which refers to these provisions, highlights that this refers also to the integration of green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, such as green roofs and green walls in the design of buildings. So with this understanding of the trend Europe is currently going to, we expect that our technology will be implemented in refurbishment as well as new projects and cities across Europe. And these cities will demand roofs and walls that provide valuable stepstone habitats and are designed for nature. Which leads us to today, where we have invited a set of great speakers with very varying backgrounds. So we'll already understand that this topic requires professions to work together. And yes, I would probably like to start with Stephan Brenneisen, who will give the first talk today. He is a geographer and urban ecologist, graduated of University of Basel with a doctorate work about ecological compensation potential of extensive green roofs, significance for species and nature conservation and urban development planning. And as far as I'm concerned, I know Stephan personally very well. He's basically still working at the topic. Just joking. Everybody who knows him, he has been working in really a lot of projects across Europe, not just in Switzerland. He's doing also very excellent consultants work, especially also for cities. He's also the head of the Urban Ecology Research Group at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences, and I think still chairing the also CR 312 Green Roof Standards Commission in Switzerland. And yeah, thanks to Stephan, I already learned back in 2008 that orchids can actually grow on green roofs. And I should be very proud of grasshoppers, spiders, and other specialized inhabitants I can find there, because this is a very excellent proof for the quality of the roof. So Stephan, welcome. This is your stage. We will collect questions, of course, in the chat and get into a discussion after your talks are finished. And yes, the next 20 to 25 minutes are yours.
Thank you very much, Eva. Vera, Entschuldigung. Yeah, I'm a bit tired. That's what I just had an all-day meeting in that norm commission with a group that was pretty much tiring. Yeah, thank you very much, Vera, and your colleague Tatiana for organizing that event. And it's a pleasure and honor for me to share what we did and still doing in our research. I just quickly, of course, try to share my screen. And is it okay now with my presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay. Let's get started. So I like this Photoshop visualization of a museum in Barcelona that try to really implement what we are doing. So how to, or like even the drawing on the left-hand side, how can we copy the landscape and what does it happen when we copy it up onto a rooftop? And we studied in the last 20 years all these different things about what is then, in fact, what are the key factors, how to bring biodiversity on roofs. We have a lot of case studies, and of course, we sorted out a bit and tried to show you some of them. What animal groups could we investigate in the last years? That is also one of the aims that I want to go through with you. And yeah, talk a bit also about installation, what is important, what do you need to be aware of. So the very basic thing when you talk to people, make them understand that you have on top of a building. It's like kind of a rock situation, and you have, in principle, you don't have access to water that is going down like in nature. So the principle is the more substrate you put on your roof, the more water can be stored, and the more water means the more biomass you create. So that is the main factor how you defining and creating new habitats on buildings. And of course, a side effect is often the type of substrate is important, and you can add different things, elements. We would say then that nature supporting elements on the roof as well. But I will show you how this can look like. So this is our masterpiece is a bit much said, but we were really lucky in more than 20 years ago that the university hospital really in the city center of Basel, it had this roof has to be retrofitted. It was a green roof before already. And here we could show then and we define in the new execution of that roof, please do different substrate levels, and also please use different substrate types. And even this is not kind of an artificial substrate. This was even topsoil substrates with different compositions of sand that was used. When we see here, maybe in the center, this is a more sandy soil, and beside that there is a more loamy soil. So different variations of soil we could implement on that roof. And this was kind of the symbol that we always show how you can define your habitat on a roof. And try to think about why varying the thickness of a substrate, it's reflecting the situation in nature. Where you say in nature, usually you have a varying situation in the underground and beneath the subsurface, what you see. It's usually very much varying. And on a green roof, you have to mimic this variation with the different substrate types or substrate levels. When we started, we realized people often think, I bring my biodiversity on the roof with the seeds. I bring 50 different plants with the seeds, independent on the substrate thickness. And we realized the seeds do grow according to the amount of water or the whatever substrate conditions they find. So if you want to have a chance that all the seeds you bringing on the roof can survive, you have to adapt also the different conditions they would find probably in nature. Also, one of the first steps we try to show, and this is a kind of a visualization when we brought some sticks, wooden sticks or logs on the roof to show the architects. You go in a third dimension, you can really think about we are creating a habitat. And that brought us also our studies to different perspectives in general about how these surfaces on rooftops can be seen. And we saw that this technology, in fact, came and in some countries even is in kind of the gardening community perspective. So you see something, you take out the weeds, you want to keep whatever you planted and you had in mind this roof should look like at the beginning. We saw in Basel, that's my hometown, and really the city, I'm still working in consulting the city, that the surfaces are really, usually nobody sees them. When we go on that photograph, air view photograph, we are talking on these extensive green roof situations that have been, these roofs have been covered in former times with gravel. And in fact, the approach of having a nice looking garden is not the right one if you think about how do we define these spaces. So we changed a bit the perspective and said this is kind of a conservation site. And so we said for example, one definition nowadays that is going to the planning permissions, you have to use native seeds from native plants. It's not allowed just to bring a gardening plant that is nice looking, because this space should be installed for urban nature. So it's still my job to consult the city of Basel with the guidelines, and I'm still following and consulting a lot of projects that's going up. We could get to the point that all new buildings that since 1999 has to be with a green roof. And since 15 years, we also added that retrofitting green roof, a retrofitted roof also has to get a green roof on top of it after the retrofit. It's kind of a standard roof cover for all flat roof buildings in Basel. So the amount is now, we are almost, this number 46% is almost 3 or 4 years away. So we would say we have halfway gone so far. The roof covers are installed with green roofs in Basel at the moment. And what we also found out, saw a bit that I would say to be, actually not many people are really interested what we're doing on these rooftops. It's kind of technical surface. And we found out we can define more or less pretty precisely to the planner, to the construction manager, how he should execute this surface on rooftop. So we can define what type of substrate they should use. We can define that they are not allowed to make always the same substrate level. So you have to vary the substrate, and you have to implement native plants. So non-native plants are not allowed to be seeded on extensive green roofs. And we increased even the thickness. We're defining at the moment, at least you have to install 15 centimeters of substrate on top of a green roof, according to the new needs of climate change that is always getting hotter and the dry periods in summer getting longer. So this is Raphael, one of my team members, and he shows you a bit when we are creating new habitats that we need to be creative. So we use different soil materials to fulfill our ideas, what we found out about the design. Here, for example, we came on a rooftop that was executed with 8 centimeters of lava pumice, and we could convince the construction manager, please can we add just on top of that 8 centimeters lava pumice a bit more soil, like in the background here we added 4 centimeters of more organic content of an additional soil. We added here just sand, and we added here some sand and larger stones from a river bank to mimic a bit the situation of a river bank. And that's a picture after 3 years. That's before and that's after, how the vegetation adapt to the situation what we are creating. On that roof specifically, and that's the work of Raphael, he's the guy who is fascinated with orchids. And we could install on that roof orchid mother plants. And it was very successful that we found out, we installed about 50 mother plants. We could get them from another place. I just show you later. And actually we have more than 300 plants, orchid plants spreading out on that roof. Fantastic site. And it shows us how we even implement stuff like nice and also for the people, interesting species like the orchids. Here I would just show you one of the principles in a picture row. That roof, as I said, we were installing 22 years back. And this is the circle usually that you see over the year. And this is the ending mostly in June, when now it's starting to get hot and dry, that the grasses will be brown and dry out. The good thing for a green roof is next year it starts more or less at the same level. And we have to tell the gardeners usually, don't be afraid if this is drying out now. Don't go out and try to mow this. You can save time. You just leave it. The vegetation density is not that high that you have to take away your biomass. Next year, that's in the next spring, for example, the picture, it will look like this. And it's always according to the amount of sandy soil or a bit more loamy soil that you install at the beginning. So this is the picture row, exactly 2003, 2006, and this is 2021. And that's for me always the one-to-one proof, if you go back, that vegetation really 100% is adapting to the amount of water and nutrients they will find on the roof. So here with the more sandy soil, you have less vegetation. Here you get more vegetation with the same substrate level. Just 3 years back, we found also this nice orchid species on that roof. This is Ophrys apifera, a very interesting plant. And yeah, we just used that plant, very nice plant, also for our congress. It was just mentioned that we hold just last week. Yeah, and the base information comes from that site. This is the Seewasserwerk Moos in Wollishofen, Zurich. This roof, or these roofs, there are 3 roof units. They are built in 1914. So more than 110 years back, these 3 has been executed. This roof is built in the 50s. This is a sand filter. They bring water from the Lake of Zurich up to here, and the sand filter is a start of a drink water procedure. And on these roofs, they put some soil to keep the room cooler. And what a very famous geobotanist in Switzerland 20 years back discovered is that on these roofs could be saved the biodiversity, the plant biodiversity that was in the area 100 years back. We have 10 different orchids, native orchid species, and one of the species is the most species-rich population, a more individual-rich population in the whole Zurich area. So it's kind of, he said, like, this is a conservation site, in fact, on a roof. And for us, it's the symbol that when we plan these green roofs smart, it really can contribute to the biodiversity of an area. The buildup is pretty simple. It was just topsoil, 20 centimeters. And I don't know in English, sorry, it was asphalt, 1.5 centimeters of the ceiling or to make it waterproof on that roof. This is a picture of a roof in St. Gallen, spontaneous orchid colonization. And now give a bit a summary of what we are investigating with students and one team member. They're fascinated with bees. We put on, this is a school building where we could consult a bit how to install or support wild bees. This is a wild bee sand installation. It's about 40 centimeters high. And we are usually trying to get students, they are observing the success if we really find, like these pictures show, if these wild bees really can nest about 50% of the wild bee species, they nest in different soil conditions in the ground. And really could prove on this roof it worked pretty well. We found nests of wild bee species. What we also implemented the use of wood on roof as you can, like these pictures show, as decoration, or of course also just as an element that different animals use as a shelter or food base. This is also part of our work when we working with the planning permissions. On that building, for example, we could define the building owner had to bring 40 cubic meter of, we call that dead wood. And of course, he's free to make a bit of a design to make it more pleasant looking. This is a roof, the St. Jakobshalle, showing a bit the elements, also these kind of design elements I just explained before. So we're always looking a bit for test fields. We had a very nice master thesis going from Jonas Frey. He was investigating how these wood installations are beneficial for snails, for example. And he could find out is very soon after such kind of an installation, you have a very new range of animals that can survive on a roof because they need more humidity, moisture. And if you wouldn't put wood on a roof, it's always in this time of the year, it's drying out completely very soon. So this is also an example, the largest green roof in Basel. It's the Stücki shopping mall. And here we got different also habitats. And this is the most species-rich habitat for grasshoppers in Basel. I just quickly go over and come then back to finish the story with the grasshoppers, or even we have Mantis religiosa on that roof. To prove if the grasshoppers can reproduce on the roof, we usually go and spring and try to find larvae. So the first stage after hatching of the eggs is that we can show there is a really successful colonization of these roofs by grasshoppers. And the interesting thing here on that roof is, maybe it's not enough time to go into details, we have 3 red-listed grasshopper species, and they bring the eggs always in different small situation, soil and moisture situation on that roof. We checked out when we once went over the roof, or that was a student work, where are the larvae occurring, and where the larvae are occurring now in this time of the year, we can be sure that they also hatched out of the egg right away on that side. Now going back to what we usually are working on with the beetles. Yeah, that's a start. Our initial finding was that we could prove we have red-listed beetle species on roofs. And that brought us to that role that we can define how green roofs has to be executed, because we proved it's a kind of valuable habitat for rare species, that the city is responsible to support them. So we saw that we have some leftover habitats in the surrounding area, and in these leftover habitats, we have some rare species, and these usually can fly, and they can, this way, they can get to the roofs back in Basel. Even the original habitat are destroyed nowadays. They find compensation habitat on roofs. The beetles is an ideal group because it's the most species group of the insects. They are very nicely adapted and have niches for all substrate condition, food condition. Like to be a bit quickly in the pictures. So we have carnivore the carabeads or the staphylionids are carnivore beetles, and then you have like the Cuculonidae, for example, they live from the plants, and others, they mainly live on the plants, but we have moss eaters, we have fungi eaters, so all the different niches are covered with the beetles. That's why we're working on the long database with the beetles. With the grasshoppers, going back to the grasshoppers, was interesting to show that is the distribution of these species in town. So independent on the height of the building, we could say if the substrate conditions fit, it's within 3 to 5 years, these grasshopper species will find these roofs and they will colonize and being able to build a population on a green roof. Even that Oedipodus caruescens was known kind of conservation knowledge. It's not an animal that is very good in flying, so it's not the best pioneer. But since we could prove that it's almost on all the roof that the situation is fitting, we could say, oh, they are so mobile, they really can reach the sky, the roofs, independent of how close kind of the original habitat on the ground is. Yeah, this is more or less what I wanted to tell you. I hope it gives you an insight on what all species can be studied on green roofs and what are the key elements you have to consider. Yeah, that's a bit my summary of the presentation. And I thank you very much for your attention. And I hope I was more or less in time, Vera. And I'm really open for a lot of questions.
Thanks a lot, dear Stephan. Thanks for this great overview. Yes, you were perfectly in time. I was just going to ask you to finish within the next 5 minutes, but then it eventually already happened. Thanks a lot. I think it was just perfect. And see, you get a lot of applause already. I would say we just pick probably 2, 3 emerging questions that we have before we switch over to animal-aided design and Thomas. So, Stephan, can I ask you, we had one question in the chat and I found it particularly interesting. So to my understanding, Mariam was asking, what about irrigation and fertilization of biodiverse green roofs? Do you sometimes irrigate? Do you sometimes irrigate parts of the roof? And is it necessary to fertilize? So we all know, normally we have a lot of people listening who are in general green roof professionals. So most of them will have in their minds, okay, if it is an intensive green roof, for sure, and irrigation is required. So we all know biodiverse green roofs, also because of the varying substrate height, are most of the time a mix of both approaches. So somewhere in the middle, semi-intensive probably. And we also saw in your presentation, okay, there is a lot of succession, a lot happens on these roofs. Different substrates are also used. So how does it work when we're talking irrigation and fertilization? What is your specific approach?
So the approach usually was, since we are in Central Europe and Switzerland, usually we had enough rain that we don't need to irrigate a proper extensive green roof. And this was probably also a benefit that you say, of course, you save cost if you don't need to install an irrigation system. And when you say it's now mandatory on all the buildings, it's the replacement of the gravel roof we had traditionally. And so the building owner doesn't need to make an installation for irrigation later on. But since climate change is occurring and we also in Switzerland get more and more Mediterranean climate conditions, so we have starting in June a very dry and hot period, we really start to think, is it beneficial or do we need to think about irrigation? Because I'm a bit worried, and we see signs, and that's part of our studies, ongoing studies, that can we prove that many of these species, they get extinct now on the roofs because they cannot survive this dry period over 3 months in summer. And if that would happen, I'm pretty sure we would need to get water sources to maybe at least to fill the gap in June or a little in July, that the plants can produce successfully seeds, and also the animals, if they are in an egg situation or whatever, they can fulfill the cycle to survive.
Yes.
With fertilizing, I usually would say we don't fertilize the roof. We always would say it should be a self-sustaining system, because we have, like, not naturally, but kind of from traffic, we have a lot of impact of fertilizer by air. And if the substrate is, how to say it, composition of the substrate is right, it can conserve these, falling from the sky nutrients. So we don't need to add permanently or every 2 years.
So there is also an accumulation of biomass, basically, right? Can we?
I wouldn't say really accumulation. Sounds a bit that you increase even your weight. It's very little, I would say, accumulation. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. I guess we have a lot of people also listening from arid regions, for example. So we also know that we need to approach also semi-intensive green roofs, sometimes some cases even extensive green roofs differently, going more south and south. Also, yes, climate is changing. Also, a large city like Vienna, for example, has now such a huge increase in heat days. Yes, so I think that's a pretty nice answer in that sense. Thanks a lot. We are now getting a lot more questions in. Okay, let's probably take a look at some of them. So Howard, sorry, I hope to spell the name right. Bringa is asking you, independent of the height, the grasshoppers colonized the roofs within 5 years. And she is asking, or he's asking, sorry, probably she, how high was the highest roof you were registering from? How high do grasshoppers get in Switzerland?
So
is the building height an issue for colonization?
Of course, at a certain point, it's an issue. But I think at that level, we usually talk about, I was just recently on a building that is 73 meters high, and we have grasshoppers there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I would say more or less up. It's more like the higher the building is, let's say if a building is 100 meters high, usually we could have called that a skyscraper. So the area of the green roof gets smaller. So the habitat is a bit not so ideal to colonize and to get for a stable population that needs a certain size and certain amount of individuals to be sustainable or that they can survive. And if you have a skyscraper, of course, the amount of technical installation on the roof itself is increasing. So sometimes we have even skyscraper buildings, they say we cannot put any green roof on it because we have elevators, we have air conditioning blocks, whatever. That's a bit more the question.
Yes. Probably that leads quite well to another question that received, not just one person is actually asking. So Pavel Dostal has asked a very important question, and we are currently looking for studies in that area, by the way, because we want to inform a bit better. How does soil biology affect the biodiversity of plants and insects? And is there any research, Stephan, on soil biology that you could recommend?
Yeah, to be honest, no, not really. That for example, Raphael, my colleague who's working with the orchids, he always tells the people orchids, they only grow in natural soil. And then if I want to tease them up, I would say, no, we have roofs, you have also artificial soil. With the time, all the fungi, you have the moss, it's getting closer to kind of a natural situation also when you start with a completely artificial soil. And to be honest, it's also my way of research. I like to observe and to show what we can see, what occurs, and measuring over the time. To go in a detail, let's say, do I find a correlation between this plant community and what is inside the soil, and the other is different? Usually it would be very difficult to get significant results out of that.
I see. I have a recent publication in my mind that I could share in that aspect from some colleagues of us in France who observed a lot of soil biology and soil properties in also biodiverse approach green roofs that also contain topsoil. So I will try and also put that link in the chat, and probably we could have a bit of a discussion on the quality. Yes, there were a lot more questions to you, Stephan. So probably while now Thomas will take over the floor, you could just browse the chat a bit and probably directly answer to people. And then we can, of course, hopefully still have a discussion, all the three of us, later on. Thanks a lot to you, Stephan. Yes, so let's get Thomas Hauck on stage. Hello, Thomas. Thomas is a landscape architect, and he also completed a vocational training as a gardener at the horticulture school in Vienna, Schönbrunn. He also did a landscape and open space planning degree at the University of Hanover and Edinburgh College of Art. His PhD he did at the Technical University of Munich, where he also worked as an assistant professor at the Department of Landscape Architecture and Public Space. And he as well served at the University of Kassel's Department of Open Space Planning. So together with urban planner Cordelia Bolina, he founded the planning office Bolina and Hauck Landscape Urbanism. And together with Susanne Ahn, he holds the professorship for landscape architecture and landscape planning at the Institute for Urban Planning, Landscape Architecture and Design at the Vienna University of Technology. And yes, Thomas is an expert when it comes to animal-aided design for buildings, building plots. So warm welcome to you. And the floor is yours. We are very, very grateful also for your input.
Thank you, Vera. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for listening to me. I would like to introduce, I will zoom a little bit out and go more into a method that is more looking on the city level and urban design level. And yes, of course, green roofs are an important part and very, very important element in planning for biodiversity in urban areas. So we developed at TU Munich and Kassel, and now we have also a startup, a studio animal-aided design, where we see animals as stakeholders of urban planning, and we working and doing research, but also practical work of to integrate the needs of animals into planning and the design of cities. And of course, this has something to do with biodiversity. So we are not producing zoos, but it's about natural processes, ecosystems, and how to integrate ecological dynamics into urban development. So, as I said, it's a method, and the idea was that we have a lot of modeling and methods in traffic planning and also climate change adaptation and so on. We thought we need something like that, some design frameworks and also techniques where we can work on the same level, eye to eye with traffic planners and others, with evidence-based knowledge and methods for development, and bring animals into the game of decisions, what is important and what not. So our aim with this method is to design for cohabitation of humans and non-human animals, and create habitat for target species. So it's a species-specific method. So it's not planning biotopes or habitats in general, but it's the focus is on that we plan for specific target species, and we have a selection process for this that I will show later very roughly. And we see animals as stakeholders of urban design and urban planning, so that gives them another status, another role in the planning process. We are choosing animals at the beginning of the planning process, identify critical factors in animal life cycles that has to be included in the planning process. And also it's about creativity. So we also see the life cycle of animals as an inspiration for design, to find new solutions for urban design or for open space planning. Of course, it's a lot about open space and landscape architecture. We developed the method in 2016, and we now have, I would say, around 20 projects in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, with public and private developers. Only a few of them are built at the moment because, as you all know, planning processes and especially on design levels are long-term processes. So what are we doing differently? So we don't question the traditional nature preservation approaches. So reservations and protected areas are very, very important. But as we all know, it's not enough, because otherwise we would not have all the problems with biodiversity loss and other things. So we think we also need a planning approach that is aligning with urban development. And so you can call it animal-aided design. There are a lot of other approaches like that try to bring in biodiversity as a planning aim into urban development. And so our approach is just one of them. And as I said, the aim is that animals become an integral part and actors in the planning process, with the aim of good design and habitats for human people, but also for animal populations. The method is, it fits together with the processes of planning. It has 4 steps, and I will go through shortly go through them. So it's an analysis and draft phase where we choose the target species. Then it's a planning and design phase in B. Then it's about realization and construction. Then, of course, post-occupancy evaluation and monitoring. So how do we select target species? So as I said, it's not a zoo. So we are not looking at what animals we think would make fun. This is also important, but we're looking, so we are identifying the regional species pool. So we're looking at the animals that are already there, but in a wider framework. So we're looking in a 20-kilometer radius. We make a data analysis. We made some studied that showed, at least in Europe, 20 kilometers are sufficient, because then the species combination is not changing so much anymore. So that's okay, 20 kilometers. And we're not doing mappings. That's too expensive for most of the projects, but we're using data that's already there. And it depends on the country and if the data basis is good or not. For example, in Hamburg, this is an example of Hamburg that you can see here. It's Oberbillwerder. We have 165,000 sightings in 20 kilometers. For example, in Switzerland, we would have something like 3 million there, because the data is much, much better there. So it depends really what data sources you have. But still, that's the data we have, and it's still good. So you know a lot about the regional species pool, and you can work with that. And then we look in a second step, which species can reach the site. And then at the third step, what potential does a site offer for species? Yeah, just a stupid example, but I think it's quite makes it clear. If we know for whatever reasons it's not possible to have water bodies included in a project, it makes no sense to work with water dependent animals. So that's, yeah, you have to analyze the potential, and that's the potential is also the planning, yeah. So also the future imagination of the development of the site. It's also what you have to analyze and look into, and what you can make out of that. And at the last step, and there we have a participatory step in between, we're choosing together with the human stakeholders that have the responsibility afterwards for the animals that are coming. We have a participatory step that you can see here. So because we have to talk about problems, there are a lot of conflicts and problems. If you we're talking about cohabitation, for example, in a housing area, there are people afterwards or in an office area that live or work with the animals, and they have to deal with I don't know, bird droppings on facades, and some people are afraid of bats and so on. And so we really have to talk about this, and also about the responsibility that the stakeholders want to, what they are able to take, what kind of responsibility they are able to take, because it's not like electricity. You can't switch the animals off and on, because if you have then birds in your facade, you're responsible for them, and it's by species protection law, it's not allowed. And if you then want them not to have anymore, you can't get rid of them, so you're responsible afterwards. And that can have a high economic impact. Yeah, for example, if you work in an industrial area with, I don't know, you're producing little ponds for amphibians, but then the company wants to extend their production site, then they really have a problem. Yeah, so you have to talk about that. So I'm coming to the detailed planning. So what we are analyzing the animals and their life cycle, because they have different needs during I don't know, breeding and mating, or if in overwintering, that's different. And we are identifying the relevant factors for planning. So we, for example, are not very interested in the colors of eggs, but we're interested in the I don't know, the measures of a breeding cave. Yeah, and so we try to identify all this relevant information, and we are producing species portraits that are the regulations, or the rules, the frameworks for the planning for the target species. And then we have a design step. It's important, as all the planners have learned. We have learned to from abstract quantities and qualities to make design out of that. For, I don't know, barrier-free planning and the needs of children and so on. We have some measures and qualities and quantities, and so it's the same with the needs of the animals. So we identifying the relevant numbers and qualities, and you have to integrate them as a designer into your design and make it part of your vision for a building or for an open space. And we have very good experience with that. So a lot of architects and landscape architects like that, because it's inspirational for them. It's a new, interesting planning target, and so they have the possibility to find new, innovative design solutions for that. You can implement AED on 3 different scales. We'll go through them very quickly. So on the whole city level, with aligned with green and blue infrastructure planning. You can work on the neighborhood development level and on project planning level. And on the citywide scale, it's all about more or less about connectivity. And we are working at the moment on a tool, on a digital tool, like in traffic planning. It's a simulation tool where you can model the urban connectivity for specific target species. Here, for example, this is Ingolstadt with the simulation of the connectivity for the blackbird, so that the dark areas is where the connectivity is good, and then the others is where it's bad. And now you really can, it's like traffic planning. Now you can start and look, where can I make connectivity better, get rid of barriers, and so on. And of course, that's different for every species. So this is for three bird species, and as you can see, the connectivity for the three species is very, very different. So of course, this is a lot of work in the future, because we have to do it for all the different animals. Some of them you can subsumize in functional groups, so you don't have to do it for every wild bee, for example. But still, we need a lot of data, where are animals and where are they not, to can model that. But we have to start it. We have done this now for 30 years for cars and pedestrians and people using a bike, but we also have to do this for animals, to understand how animals can move in the city, on this fine scale, and also what kind of resources do they need in the urban environment. And then, of course, you can start, here you can see the connectivity is good, and then you can start with really planning interventions, how can I connect corridors and so on. So we were doing this on the landscape level for some decades now, but this is really, really not so specific. So we need really a different tool, because as you all know, in cities, the spatial mosaic is much more heterogeneous. So we need different modeling technique for that, and so we try to develop this. But coming to the neighborhood level, so the green roof is important, but what my most important, let's say, narrative of this lecture is that you can't look at it isolated. You have to, for some animals you can fulfill their needs on a green roof, but for many animals they need a combination of different spatial units. They need green facades, they need open spaces with food resources, and they need, I don't know, water bodies somewhere, and so on, and trees. And what we are doing is we are developing a network of measures and habitat structures on a neighborhood level for target species, as you can see here, for a urban extension, a new neighborhood for 10,000 people, I think, in Hamburg. And here it's for 30 target species. You can see this is a network of different measures, and they are happening in different spatial units. They are happening on the water bodies, so the dikes and the ditches, and they're happening in the park, in the green spaces, and we need facades, and we need green roofs, of course, and we need facades with greening, and we need facades without greening, and so on. And so that's how we do, and we then producing rule books or toolboxes for the urban planners, and we have to quantify this information, because this planning process are very long and responsibilities are changing during, I don't know, this 10 or 20 years of development. And so we really need very good KPIs and strict numbers. So you have to give so and so many, I don't know, nesting boxes for swifts into this kilometer of facades, and you have to put this kind of soil in this height on the roof, and so many square meters, and so on and so on. So we really have to produce a lot of numbers for that, and these numbers have to be implemented into different planning instruments, like in zoning plan, and in, I don't know, in in contracts with developers and in design guidelines and so on. So there are different instruments that you have to address. Yeah, it's not only one instrument, and that makes it very complicated because we have no standardized planning framework in Europe, and I think never. And there's nothing like that where you can say, and this is the biodiversity planning instrument that you can use for urban development. These don't exist. So you have to improvise and find ways to muddle yourself through and get your numbers somewhere anchored where they can stay and where they have an impact. Okay, so we're producing pictures and rules and guidelines how this can be implemented in neighborhood development. But you can also not only use it for changing or retrofitting or make something better afterwards, but if you really plan new cities or new city quarters, neighborhoods, then you really can, with this planning method, you can really change the system and the design, so you can define the new blue and green infrastructure and integrate the needs of animals into that. So you really can have an impact there. And for example, we did it for a new city near Wiesbaden. It's for also 10,000 people. And so this is a new green infrastructure that is really also not only, that's clear, we are always having multifunctional, multi-coding approaches. So it's good for humans, but it's this green infrastructure, green blue infrastructure here is also good for a lot of different animal species with very, very different habitat needs. Okay, I'm coming to the project planning. This is our first build project. It's in Munich. It's a social housing project. And you can do very small things like these bed boxes in the facade here, for example. Yeah, you know, these are standard measures, but still you have to think about where the bed droppings is falling. So better not on the balcony and in your wine glass in the evening. So it should be some vegetation down there. And many people are afraid of bats. And as you know, bats are, as we all have experienced, they have a good relation to COVID viruses, and there are also the bats in Europe have a lot of they are vectors for diseases, let's say it like this. So you have to think about that, how you can arrange this that it works well with the human population in an area. Yeah, this is another system of bed boxes in a prefabricated facade system. Or you can think about new stuff and explore new solutions here. For example, for this kind of facade, these are, I don't know how it's called in English, this shindeln made of clay. And you have to give the facade planners a lot of information, how high are the birds, and you know, of course, bird flying against glass is a very big issue, but I will not go deep into this now because you can have your own lecture about that. And you can think about some funny solutions for hedgehogs. And of course, green roofs are one of the most important habitat units that we're working with. And yeah, we have seen a lot now by Stephan, so I don't want to repeat this, but this is, for example, also, as you have seen also by Stephan, this is for wild bees, a little where you get higher with the substrate, with a specific loamy sand substrate that they can use for breeding, for example. Maybe this is interesting. We had the chance in this it was a social housing, so everything has to be not so expensive, but we had the chance to make a roof experiment there. And what we did, we had some plots where we used standard green roof system. And then we compared it with some heterogeneous changes, as Stephan already said, some wood or some stones, or even some little refuges in the manipulations in the soil. And yeah, we already have some published results. So these were the manipulations and these are the standards. And so we had some of them also the height differences there, and some we made only plain and with different heights. And then we looked at the soil life. Yeah, we were not interested in pollinators, but in the soil life. And yeah, there are some regulations in Switzerland, and they are really absolutely correct. So we also would say don't go under 10 or 12 centimeters, because as you know, it's clear, but here are some numbers. If you get higher, you have more soil life, more individuals, but you have also more taxa then. Yeah, that's important here. This is 5 centimeters, and this is 15 with the individuals, and here it's the taxa. So yeah, you have more biodiversity if you have more height in the substrate. And what's also important, as we already also had before, this is substrate height and maximal temperature in summer. So when you have 5 centimeters, only you have 60 degrees on the roof skin, and this only a few animals can survive that. Yeah. So what you if you have not enough substrate height, you kill your soil life over the summer. Yeah. So you're more or less building an ecological trap. So it's really a negative thing that you can do if you're not high enough. And with 15 centimeters, in our case, it's Munich. Yeah. So it depends, of course, where you measure this, but yeah, still 50 centimeters, you only have 40 degrees. So that's yeah, you can survive this for a short time. That's okay then. Yeah. And the same in winter. Yeah. You have with 5 centimeters, we have here in this, yeah, in the period we measured, we had, I don't know, minus 12, and even here with 15, it was even, yeah, only a little bit under freezing. So yeah, it's worth getting higher. Okay, but of course, the most important, yeah, resource for everything, it's vegetation, and this vegetation is, yeah, on ground, because yeah, we need a lot of biomass for many animals with very diverse vegetation structures, and so that's what we do, developing the vegetation concepts for target species, as you can see here, and of course with producing plant list and so on. And this is also a design issue, because as you can maybe imagine, spontaneous vegetation has a higher functionality than gardening vegetation, because we have some kind of coevolution there. Yeah, the animals and the plants, the spontaneous plants, they had a coevolution for a long time now, so they have a higher functionality than non-native or even native garden plants. But this is an aesthetic problem, and it's so yeah, it's something for planners that they have to think about how they can include Urtica dioica or a Chenopodium album into planting schemes. Yeah, yeah, we know some rules there, but it's not only about flower-rich meadows. That's only one aspect. Yeah, we also need vegetation that can be left alone for 2 or 3 years. Yeah, that's very, very important, because we have other plant species, and we have a higher functionality for a lot of insects, because the stems they are staying and so on. And this, a lot of people, they don't, even if they don't know the plants, and that's the case, but they can identify them as indicators for not caring. And that's very important. So we have to find design solutions to integrate more ecological dynamics. Yeah, it's good on roofs. But there is the good thing that many people don't see that. So we also say, please don't mow, let the roofs alone. That's fine. That's good. That's the best you can do. But it's not so easy to say that on ground, yeah, where the people, where they look at all the time, and where they are also using these areas. That's more complicated there, but we also have to find solutions to have more spontaneous vegetation and ecological dynamics in on ground in the open spaces of the city. Yeah, so that's just some solution for wild bees where we can integrate it into park planning. And now I'm finished more or less. Because of course you have to be on construction sites, so we are doing strange things that the standard builders don't know, and you have to be there, yeah, to look that everything is okay. And of course, we would need money to make monitoring. That's in commercial projects. That's not the case normally. So. Yeah, we had the chance to do it in the Brandstraße in Munich. That's the example I showed, because it was a research project where we had the chance to have monitoring and look, have to check if our measures work for the target species. And of course, yeah, we had the house sparrow as target species, and this is not a house sparrow. This is I don't know, it's called a field sparrow in English. I don't know. I just telling you that, yeah, you know, we have a very technical language, very positivistic, but of course, yeah, ecological process is complex, and it's, yeah, you always will have surprises, but that's okay, and that's good, because that's why we love nature, because we don't have it under control completely, and so that's, I think, is important, yeah, to be flexible and to be open, that you will, yeah, you're starting ecological processes with these kind of things, yeah, that you can't control for 100%. And in my from my point of view, that this is good. Okay, thank you very much. Here's our web page. We try to publish our solutions and our research, and thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Thank you also for this great presentation. Yeah, you, I think, voiced a lot of new other interesting details, and you really managed to, I mean, Stephan went deep into the roof, right? And you just zoomed back a bit, yeah. Described us basically also the function of the roof in the whole green space of the city and how important it is to understand well the circumstances and the nature targets we need to realize when designing projects. We have at first Ruth Niels, who says the correct English term is tree sparrow. Thanks a lot. Now we know. And I just collected one question earlier in the chat, which I find really interesting and also important. It's more about costs. Yeah, so we all know, some of us are practicing landscape architects, planners outside there in the real world. Every cost added or everything which is somehow against the current system. Also, I mean, it must be said that we always have to distinguish between projects that run under a general contractor or really probably smaller developments with a lot of people interested who are actually involved, who care, who will live there. So, of course, it also depends on the project type, right? So what's your experience? Is there added cost when applying animal-aided design? Can it probably be covered in certain processes or funds that are out there already? And probably that's a bit question of mine that now comes up when I'm reflecting about the EU nature restoration law and the, of course, urban plans that now must basically be done, specified nature restoration activities and also target species should be there for the city, so more data incoming also. Yes, how would you make the connection?
Yeah, of course, the costs are higher. So I would say the planning costs are higher. So that's not so much the building cost, but it depends on what you do. So you can do things that you do anyway a little bit different, so then it's not so that makes so much costs. Or for example, as Stephan also said, yeah, you know that the green roofs that are done normally it's good, but you need all what Stephan said, and we also what we do a lot. We do a lot that Stephan and in Switzerland was developed because there's good data and they've started a long time ago to do that, also for solar green roofs and so on. And yeah, it's important to change how we do extensive roof greening and so on. And you can do, it's the same with facade greening, it's the same with facades without greening. So to add some nest boxes is not so it's not a lot more expensive in building it, but it's a little bit more expensive in planning. And there's always a lot of concerns. So it takes time to develop that. And of course, I think the main thing is in the open spaces, it's about different maintenance regimes. It's very, very important to talk about that. And there it gets really critical because we have a lack of competences there, a lack of money. Yeah, as you all know, most municipalities, but also, I don't know, housing associations and so on, they don't have the janitor anymore. Yeah, a person that potentially could learn what to do the next 30 years, yeah, and who knows the site. No, we have external companies with sometimes not very well educated gardeners, or even there are no gardeners. And that's a problem. So you have to really find very, very simple structures that with a simple maintenance regime. And I think this is a very big topic we have to work on, I would say. So for me, it's the main cost factor is not building, but it's planning, and it's then maintaining and having it for a long time afterwards. So that's, I would say. Yeah, and what could help? It's certification systems are helping. The not loved sustainability reporting of the European Union helps.
Yes.
That's very nice.
Yeah. So you're now referring to the taxonomy, right?
Yeah,
and
you have
TFND.
You have the report directive.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
Report. So that, yeah.
Unfortunately, all these directives are currently now being revised, right?
Yeah,
there is an omnibus act driving through, so let's hope the result will be not a drop in quality.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
But it's good to hear that you see the that you see that this is impacting.
Yes. Yeah. You can see.
Very good.
You can absolutely see an impact there, and then it depends on the clients. So municipalities have different. They often have biodiversity, or the big municipalities have biodiversity strategies, and for them, these kind of methods are a way of implementing them. Then you have housing associations and companies. It's interesting. They really have the needs of their the people living in their houses, because they saying, well, mostly in the framework of redensification. So if you have a housing area from the 60s, 70s, and you add some buildings, then the people say, yeah, we accept this, but what will happen with our squirrels? What will happen with our sparrows and with our butterflies? And so there's an interest by the people in this client field. And then private developers, it's about image building, and it's about certification and taxonomy, I would say.
Probably we can take up another question from the chat in that relation, because I mean, we know in general there is the European renovation wave. There is also the new European Bauhaus. Certain qualities are being set. So there is hopefully a shift in rather renovating than building on Greenland, right? So refurbishment is also on the top of our agenda in regards to product development, of course. So Isabel Mühlbauer asked in the chat, do you probably also have knowledge about renovation projects and how to deal with, for example, existing nests in the facade, and how to integrate nesting aids in the frame of renovating the building? So I think this is more a technical solution question, because we are discussing always replication. Yeah, so just to give you probably a bit more of background. So this is also where Stephan could come in later on. So the Swiss standard on green roofing, CR 312, when it came out 2013, from our monitoring, it was the first standard, so norm for green roofs worldwide, with a, let's say, comprehensive and strong chapter about biodiversity integration and what a roof must do or cover to reach certain biodiversity targets. In Austria, we had a supplement to our existing standard from 2010, which said, okay, this is what you can do, and it's now being integrated into this standard as well. So hopefully end of 2025, it will be out. So still, how can we deal with existing nature when we refurbish? Do we have answers to that? And you already said it, certification is now interesting, but also if we are working on standards and norms, setting also minimum targets for biodiversity, would that be to your understanding a good move also for other countries?
Yeah, let's go to refurbishment. Maybe I start and then Stephan. That's I have to laugh a little bit, because you know that the European species protection law, it forbids the killing and the destruction of animals and the destruction of breeding sites and so on. So you have to substitute.
Legally obliged.
You have to substitute the caves and breeding sites of birds in facades. You have to do it. And there are standard solutions for that. Yeah, there are producers of nesting boxes and so on. But of course, we need more solutions for, there's a lack of solutions for wooden facades or for some specific, I don't know, aluminium facades and so on, or for clinker and brick facades. So there are some
green
gaps.
Facades.
Or green facades, yeah. So we have to develop solutions, but we have to do it. So that's not should we have to, and we are dealing with that, of course, but there are a lot of offices in Germany that give advice and doing this, making plans for substituting the nesting boxes, nesting sites with quarters and nesting boxes and so on. But I know also from Austria, I have to say that this is not the standard in many countries. So it's ignored. It's still somehow.
I think it also depends.
Thing.
Yeah, no, it depends also, to my understanding, on the level of power of the nature protection department of the municipality or city or whatever. So if they are strong, if they have solutions, if they're also well linked to the building department, to the department really dealing with renovation, that works. So we have city examples where this is linked well and where the level of power also for biodiversity integration works. And then we have a lot of examples, but you're also saying this is not yet solved, so it's just being ignored, but probably also communicating positive examples, right, in that area could help. So
and often what's good is if the NGOs, they also could control it, but they need also a good connection to the nature preservation departments. And I think then you have a lot of pressure that the owners of the buildings are doing it.
Yes. I also have the experience that sometimes also a nature protection department of a city or a municipality says there is no biodiversity or nature on roofs. These are for us underrated. We know these deserts. Yeah, so it's not existing. So why should we deal with it? So I think it's a complex issue. Coming back to Stephan, standardization, norms, that really, of course, is a hard question to you. But I think Switzerland and Austria, we are somehow a bit on the track. Yeah, we also have this great, let's say, environment that we have standards in place already, and let's say not just guidelines. So is that the way? Could we integrate more even?
So I don't get precisely what would be then the question. Can you repeat quickly?
No,
By the norms.
Yeah, you were the first country, I would say, even to my understanding on a worldwide basis, in 2013, you invented a building standard for green roofs that already incorporated biodiversity features, rules, etc. Yeah, this was very unique back then. So we see some first replicators. But to your understanding, was that helpful for the development in Switzerland and also the development of the market to have a standard, a norm in place?
To be honest, I would say, of course, it's somehow helpful since there is a chapter about that topic. And in practice, I wouldn't say there's a lot going up green roofs that really serves then for biodiversity, because we have like a chapter in the norm. But it's also a bit a problem of the norm itself, that it's not, if we would ask a building manager or so, even some landscape architects would say, do you know the norm about the green roofs? They said, no, there is a norm, I didn't know. Okay, can you please send it over? But actually we are in a revision of that norm. And what I really like, this topic, this chapter, is going now much more deeper. So we realized you have to define it more precisely. That means the amount, when you say we have a very large roof from 10,000 square meters, you have to define how much wood would fit on this size, how much cubic meters of wild bee sand should be executed, and not just a note, wild bee sand is beneficial, wood is beneficial. And then you know how
specific target.
Is, I call that,
yes, of course.
I don't know in English, in German I would say this homöopathisch. They put one small wood piece on the roof and I said, hey, wow, we did something great for nature. And this maybe, I hate that a bit, but it's in general like these elements for supporting nature. People sometimes think I do something small and then it's great and for all the time. That explain people, please, biodiversity, animals, species are not that simple. Really, it needs a very deep understanding. And that's why I really admire this approach of animal-aided design that says, hey, come on, it's not because, as I understood, Thomas, when they started, it's not just a picture and it's about visualization of animals and connected with some plants.
Yeah.
But to the students, I think it's really interesting. In fact, how do we plan landscape in cities? We always plan with plants because they're visible. You can make green trees, whatever. You never animals are not around. You don't see them. Look out of the window. You don't see animals mostly. It's very difficult to plan them. But what I realized on roofs, it can be interesting because people can get interested when you think, oh, we have a nice whatever butterfly could come here, or a nice spider or a beetle. It makes the whole story a bit more fresh, It touches emotions. What is hard, norms is very hard, I would say, to deal with, and that I really understand, but it's part of the business.
Yes. Well said. Well said. I think that was a great wrap up. Before I do the closing words and I show everybody online here what our next topics in terms of webinars are on the agenda, I still have one last question, probably to you, Thomas. In case some of the people involved here want to engage with animal-aided design, apply the method, apply the concept, what should they do? Are you offering specified training or even a certification? What would be your advice? Probably you can write this into the chat. And there was one last question that you could probably both comment.
They can write me. So that's the easiest way.
Okay, good, great, already answered. So probably if you just take a look at the chat while I do the wrap up. So there was a last question, I think, about social rejection towards the presence of animals such as bats, as insects, and what if you have a kind of cooking recipe, how to deal with that.
No, you have, okay. Should I write this later or should I answer it now?
it would be really nice if you answered in the chat, so we have it recorded. Because we already reached, unfortunately, to our time limit. I have to say I was expecting this, because on biodiversity topics we always receive a lot of requests and everybody's very interested. So already before I do my wrap up, thanks a lot to both of you. You brought great presentations. There is a lot we can actually take from it. And from an EFB viewpoint, we will be in touch with you over the next coming months because of the implementation of the nature restoration law and probably guidance coming out from this background. To everybody here, we just recently had a republication which is free access on the EFB website. It's about benefits of green buildings and a compilation of numbers, data and facts from different scientific investigations on it. So in case you're interested, you can take a look. Since last week, there is a brand new publication in English about solar green roofs. It's a resource guide which we wrote together with World Green Infrastructure Network and Solar Power Europe. You can also download it for free with just basically giving us your data. Please just get there and get your document. We have an EFB open meeting on the 24th upcoming, where we are again looking at European policy, try to implement and understand how it actually works. This solar green roof guidance is being presented by Sophie Rousset-Rouvière. Yes, we're just going together with the colleagues from Vegin, but also ELKA, to discuss the state of play in European politics. On the 26th of June, there is a cool webinar from our research project Go Nature Positive, which deals with, well, really going deep into the industry and how we can have a transformation from our current industry viewpoints. There was just done a recent mapping about policies and private sector initiatives for a nature positive economy on an even worldwide scope, and this webinar deals with the results that we found. Our next EFB webinar, Andreas Dreisebner from Switzerland, who is research and development at Solarspar and A77 Garden Design. He will talk about bio-solar roofs and solar green roofs together with Sophie Rousset-Rouvière, who is also vice president at the EFB from Biodiverse France, and she will also give an overview about the new guidance, design guide, and how it can be useful to people. Like always, our webinars are being recorded and uploaded. Basically, this is our approach in trying to offer as many people as we can free, very, very high quality knowledge on green roofs and green walls. So please make sure to go on the YouTube channel and rewatch the webinar in case you missed some parts or you also want to share it with your colleagues. I think that's it for today. So a very warm thank you to everybody, to all of you, and see you next time when we are discussing again the topic of biosolar and solar green roofs. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Stephan. Thank you, Vera, for moderation and amazing moderation. Yes, thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for your participation.